What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We're here, we're back, but we got ourselves some bowl games to go over. Yes, there's a lot of stuff going on in the football world, but we still got to pick our bowl games. If you want to stay tuned for an update on what I think about the playoffs and how they are structured, please like and subscribe for that coming up in the next couple days. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the month. I doubt it's going to happen, but if you want to help a little fella's dreams, please like and subscribe. But let's get right into this. We have is the Army Navy game. I know this isn't a bowl game, but it's during bowl weekend, so we have to. We're gonna cover it. I do find this game very fun, and Army's ranked, so it still follows in theme. What do I think about these two teams? I think they're very similar in their play style. They both run the option play style, as well as a kind of combination of triple and potential passes, maybe, depending on how they feel. I think Army is a significantly better team in this matchup. They were both undefeated at some point in the beginning of the season, but Army came out on top on that straightforward line. I know they got dominated by Notre Dame. If they didn't get dominated by Notre Dame, we're having a bit of a different discussion on this 12-team playoff and who actually gets in. I have Army coming out on top, 17-12 in this one. I think Army's going to be able to handle business. It's going to be a low-scoring matchup. It generally is. I think the last 3 times they played, it's all been within one score. And I think out of the last 10 times, it's been with one score, except for a couple of times. So I do think that it's going to be very close. No matter how skillful Army could be, Army and Navy is a bloodbath. It's a battle. I can't wait to see it. Next game we have is South Alabama versus Western Michigan in the Salute to Veterans Bowl out there in Montgomery, Alabama. So South Alabama is going to get a little bit of a bolster here because it's in the state that they're from. But I do think that this game will be relatively close-ish. I think that there's going to be a battle. It's a bowl game. But they're both two low-level FBS teams, so I don't expect them to be too tough on each other. I do have South Alabama winning this 26-17, and I don't think it's going to be much closer. Western Michigan isn't as good as, say, South Alabama within this perspective of 5 teams. Next ranked game we have is Memphis versus West Virginia at the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. You know, quality stuff out there on December 17th. It's a little next week game, and Memphis had a strong end of the season. They started out with a couple losses that really hurt their chances to make the playoff, but they ended strong. They beat ranked Tulane. They got in the ranking. They didn't end up getting in the American Championship just because they had more losses than, say, Tulane and Army. But they did have a strong end of their season. I'm really hopeful that they have a lot of their team does return next year because I feel like they're going to be a sight to see next year within the American. West Virginia, on the other hand, they have about as the season as you're ever going to think they're going to have within the ACC. So my score here is going to be 21-20. I think it's going to be a close game. The spread has -1.5. It's right. I don't think Memphis is at the highest level of competing with those Power 4 conferences just yet, even in the low-level Power 4 teams like West Virginia. So I think Memphis either is going to score just above West Virginia or potentially just outscore West Virginia entirely and maybe run with it, but I do think it's going to be a closer game. The next matchup we have is JMU versus Western Kentucky at the Roof Claim Boca Raton Bowl. This is a cool bowl game. It's very fun. It's in a very nice area. It's going to be nice weather generally. Hopefully, it's going to be nice weather for these teams. But Western Kentucky is a good program overall within the group of 5 realm. JMU had a great season last year. Then they had a semi-decent start to their big season this year. I know in my choices, I would had JMU at the beginning of the season favored to make it pretty far and maybe potentially compete for the playoff spot. But that was before I even took an account that they were missing their head coach. They lost like 17 players to the portal, plus 17 plus players to the portal, and then they lost their first game. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not surprised they lost that. They're not the same team as they were last year, and they still aren't the same team as they were last year. But I do think they can handle business against Western Kentucky, and I think they're going to be able to win by probably 10 points. I think it's going to be 28-17. Be great weather, great atmosphere. I think JMU is going to really score out on this one. And we have is the LA Bowl, hosted by Gronk. I wonder are they doing the field goal? Who knows? UNLV ranked 24, still the rankings after that loss to Boise for the second time this year. Cal is a team within the ACC, but I don't think the spread is doing any favors. I don't think Cal is going to be able to compete with UNLV. UNLV is a really good team. It just depends on who shows up on the field. That UNLV I know probably has a lot of people in the portal, and that's unfortunate because they had a really good season. And I'm not going to blame any player for leaving to try to find greener pastures. When I say green pastures, a higher FBS team somewhere in the Power 4 to compete for, if they want to compete for championships and stuff. UNLV can compete for championships. It's just very unlikely. And Boise's one of those diamond in the rough kind of situation, especially for the Mountain West, which is why I have UNLV winning this game 30-24. If the UNLV that we all know and love shows up to play, they're beating Cal. I would even have this score even higher, but I wanted to be a little bit more realistic that I just don't know who's showing up for UNLV, so I think Cal can stay within this game. Next bowl game we have is the New Orleans Bowl, or the RL Carriers, versus Georgia Southern versus Sam Houston. Georgia Southern is favored in this game. Sam Houston's a good football team. I know I talked a little bit about them in past, talking about different conference realignment things with the Pac-12. So I do think that Sam Houston has a team that can compete, but I don't think they're like the greatest team. But I also don't think Georgia Southern's the greatest team. It's not like they're playing a group Power 5 team here. I think they're going to be about equal wavelength here when it comes to skill. That's why I have Sam Houston edging a victory over Georgia Southern. There is a little upset alert. I'm not going to ring the bell because it's not really that big of a deal. It's the New Orleans Bowl. I do think Sam Houston might come on top of this one. Next game we have is on December 20th. We have is Ohio Bobcats. Congratulations on the underdog story, beating Miami, Ohio in the championship versus the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, which is also another conference championship. Handling business. Give a round of applause for them handling business on their championship. Neither of these teams had a chance to make the playoffs, so there was never much sight. There wasn't much visual oversight on their game, kind of like Boise and UNLV, and even potentially the Tulane Army game, just because like those two teams probably those four teams had a better chance than say like Ohio or Jacksonville. So they're playing in the Cure Bowl, breast cancer awareness, and I think Ohio might come out on top on this one, just because they are coming off with a lot of momentum in their last game. And they had the hype, and I think they can live up to it. Jacksonville's a good team, and I do think they're a very good team. They have a really good coach. I don't know if their coach is leaving. I would have to look it up, but don't quote me on that. But I do think Ohio is going to win this. If Ohio wins this by one score, I think it's going to be like 21-14, maybe 21-17. I think it's going to be a lower score. And I know this red says plus or minus over-unders. I know the over-unders around 53, and that's about 28 points per team. But I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, lower scoring matchup. I think it's going to be 21-14. Next matchup we have is Tulane versus Florida at the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Swords up. Boom, 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 boom. And Florida's coming off a great season. Better than most would have ever thought they would have had. Fullback's quarterback is looking great. Tulane is coming off a season where there was a lot of hope, a lot of dreams, and then they didn't make it. They were looking at the playoff berth. They had Oklahoma and Kansas State on their schedule to bolster that resume, as the committee has constantly said over the last couple of years. You need to bolster. You need more Power 5 wins or even ranked wins. So they put two, not powerhouses, but semi-decent teams on their resume. They lost to both of them. Then they go down and they lose to Memphis, get out of the rankings. They were in a good shot to even potentially bounce a Big 12 team, depending on what happened there. But then they lost that, and then they lost to Army. It was just their whole season just crumbled right there at the end there. That's why I don't think they're going to be able to win this game. I think Florida's going to be able to handle business. They're just a better team. They can compete at the highest level with some of the highest talent in the league. And if Tulane's losing to Army, we saw what happened to Army against Notre Dame. So I don't think Tulane's going to be able to compete too much. I even think that I put too many points for Tulane. I would just give them a little bit more points just because of the bowl game. They might compete at the higher level. But I do think Florida's going to come out on top of this one. Next game we have Coastal Carolina versus UTSA Roadrunners. Both very interesting. I remember Coastal Carolina a couple years ago really came on the map when they had that practically undefeated season, and then they weren't even ranked for it, but they had a really rough schedule. When I say rough, I mean it was really bad. UTSA Roadrunners is another one of those teams that also around that same time also had an practically undefeated season. I think they have one loss, and they were going really, really crazy. But they're playing the Myrtle Beach Bowl. UTSA is, on paper, is a better team than Coastal Carolina this year. There's not much to say about them. I don't really know too much about their programs. I know this is my job. No, it's not really my job, but I can't sit and learn 130 teams and watch 130 different games. But I do have UTSA based on just their overall on paper. I think UTSA will win this game 35-21. Next game we have is Fresno versus NIU. They're playing the famous Idaho Bowl. Yes, a very famous. I think they're gonna be playing the Boise Stadium. It's gonna be super cold. It's gonna kind of suck. Not gonna lie. I would hate to play here. Northern Illinois coming off that great win against Notre Dame way early in the season, and then they kind of just crumbled from there and just started losing more games. They were ranked in the AP poll for a couple weeks, and then they just kept losing. Fresno is probably in the same boat. I don't think they were ranked, but I think they had a couple votes in the AP poll at some point, and then they just kept losing. So it's gonna be the battle of the mid here. Do I have Fresno State coming on top of Northern Illinois? I think Northern Illinois has a worse season than Fresno. I know, but Northern Illinois has the best win, but they haven't really shown off what they could do since they won that. So I think Fresno's going to win this 2017. Next matchup we have is South Florida versus San Jose State in the Hawaii Bowl. You know, this is the vacation bowl that all the group of 5 teams love to have. They always want to get bid for this one. It's a fun time. You get to go in Hawaii and just hang out for a little bit, and then go play the mini game called football on Saturday. But most of the time it's just like vacation life, especially down right there in the middle of December. I know a lot of these teams, both of these teams actually, are from warmer climates, so it's not like anything special. But it's Hawaii. Come on, it's Hawaii. I do think that South Florida is going to come out to compete. San Jose State probably come out to compete as well. San Jose State is potentially going to the Pac-12 in a couple years, so they're going to try to like really show out that they can win bowl games and like bring something to the table. But I do think South Florida is going to come out on top on this one, 27-26. They've had a great season. They've competed at the highest level with some of the best teams in the nation. So I do think South Florida is going to come out and win with the victory here. 27-26. Next game we have is Pitt versus Toledo, December 26th at 2 o'clock. We have Game Above Sports Bowl. Never heard of it. Probably never will. This might be the only time. Who knows? Pitt versus Toledo. Toledo is a good team in the MAC. They're in their world of the MAC. They're a fairly good program. Outside of the MAC, they don't really play at the highest level. When they play other Power 4 teams, it's not anything special. They usually get blown out. But Pitt, on the other hand, had an undefeated season. Rough end to it. They just went on a huge losing streak. After that loss, they kind of just started crumbling down. The team seemed like they just lost all morale. So I think that Pitt is a good team. They just can't stay consistent enough to win more games. But I do have Pitt winning this game. I think they're going to win this game pretty easily. 31-14. Toledo's a good team. They're a good football program. But I just don't think they're going to be able to compete on the highest level here. Pitt has competed at the highest level. Even their losses were not blowouts. And a lot of these teams, it is the ACC. Yes, and they're not as well regarded as the Big Ten or the SEC, but they are still a Power 4 conference nonetheless, so I do think they're going to handle business. Next game we have is a Rutgers versus Kansas State. Rutgers has got a bowl game. Congratulations, Rutgers. Round of applause to them. They're not at the bottom like Northwestern, but I will say they're at the Rate Bowl. Nothing special, and they're playing against Kansas State, who historically is a ranked team most of the time, but not this year. Not this end of the season. They were ranked a little bit before the last week of the year. They were ranked most of the season, so I do think they're going to compete at the highest level. I have Kansas State pretty much blowing them out on this game, 35-20. Kansas State's a very high-scoring, high-flying offense within their own regard. Rutgers is not one of those type of offenses or defenses, and I think they're going to be able to handle business in this one. Next game we have is Arkansas State versus Bowling Green in the 68 Ventures Bowl out there in Mobile, Alabama. I don't know much about either of these teams. I'm not going to lie to you. Arkansas State, they had a bowl game last year. They competed in it. Bowling Green also. They're within their conferences, within their realm. They're pretty decent teams. But I will say we'll have Arkansas State with the upset on this one. I know Bowling Green is favored by 6.5. But I do think that Arkansas State can handle business. I love a little upset here or there on this Christmas season. Next, we have December 27th, noon o'clock. We have it's Oklahoma versus Navy at the Armed Forces Bowl. Sponsored by Lockheed Martin. Military action. Navy's like I said earlier in the video, Navy's had a great season. They had a great year. Right there at the start, they were ranked at the highest level. And then they lost Notre Dame, and they started losing a couple more games. But I do think that they're going to be able to compete at the highest level here. They are, I think, on paper, are a better team than Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma beat Alabama. So Northern Illinois also beat a top-ranked team sometime in their year. But I don't think they're going to be like anything special. Which is why I have Navy win this 14-10 on this. It's going to be a low-scoring matchup. Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure, has lost their QB to the transfer portal. I think they've lost a couple more key assets to the transfer portal as well, and maybe even potentially some people to draft. So I don't think they're going to have their best team out there, and I think Navy's going to be able to take advantage of that. Most people who go to Navy, they don't really leave very much. Next game we have is Georgia Tech versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt coming off a great season. Another person who has a victory over Alabama, but they still are in the ticket smarter Birmingham Bowl. Nothing too special. They're against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's had a great year. They beat Miami. Both these teams have had great victories over very high caliber teams. So I think this might be a very fun game to watch. Which is why I have Vanderbilt coming out on top on this one just slightly. I think it's going to be a very close game. A little more high scoring matchup, 30-27. Maybe even potentially more points than that, just depending on who shows up to play this game. Next game we have is the Liberty Bowl. Texas Tech versus Arkansas. Prime time. Texas Tech is a team in the Big 12 that had a good start. They started out 5-1. Then they started losing games. There was a point at some point where they were in contention for the Big 12 title, but then they, like I said, started losing more games. Arkansas never was in a chance to win the SEC. They definitely have some interesting victories over some of those higher tiered SEC programs, so they are a pretty good team nonetheless, which is why I think it's going to be a very high-flying matchup. Neither of these teams can really play defense to the highest level, but I do think Arkansas is going to come out on top on this one, 40-35. Next Saturday game, another ranked matchup. I know it's been a while since we saw a ranked team. A lot of them are in a better bowl games. This is a DirecTV Holiday Bowl in San Diego. Syracuse versus Washington State, Pac-12 on ACC. Washington State's had an interesting season. They had a chance to make the playoffs. They were just one out. They had one loss to Boise. All they had to do was win out, and even they would have been potentially an argument for them to make it. Maybe, I don't know. Just depending on, I don't think they would have been put over Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina. But there was still hope there. There was still a chance. Syracuse, great end of the season, beating Miami, kicking them out of the playoffs. Kind of sucks for Cam Ward and crew, but they just had to handle business, but they didn't. But I do think in this game, it's going to be a closer matchup at 35-32. It's going to be very high scoring, but it's also going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a very fun game to watch right there after Christmas. Last game of the day we have is Las Vegas Bowl, Texas A&M versus USC. Not really prime time, but late night matchup. Texas A&M is favored in this game. Texas A&M and USC. Texas A&M not so much, but USC lost their quarterback. Texas A&M lost their backup QB, and they probably both have lost many other players to the portal. I'm not going to name them all off, but I do think that it's going to be a very interesting game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than one would think, but I do have, should I say it? Upset alert. We do have USC coming on top of this, 27-24. I do think that USC all around is a better program. Not necessarily a better team. They've had a lot of rocky road this year. Texas A&M was competing for a SEC title nonetheless. That was very interesting, to say the least. They were competing for that spot, but they also had like 3 losses at that moment, so they had 2 out of conference. So I don't think their season was going too well. But I do have USC winning this. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. We will be doing a part 2 next in the next couple days or next week, depending on how the schedule is. Please like and subscribe. We're also doing the playoff picks and predictions on a different day. Since it's not this week, we're probably going to do it on next Monday. We might do a bracketology this week, so please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for that. Peace.